it's Vanessa the Crafty Gemini, and in this video tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make reusable bowl covers. Alright, now this project is the last video in my 12 days of last-minute DIY gifts, so we're going for a super quick and easy way of how to make these reusable bowl covers. There are dozens of different ways to make these so that they look more finished with casings and all this, but we're going for a quickie version, so I'm going to show you in the video tutorial how to take the measurements of your bowl so that you can make a custom fit reusable cover. I'll be using a 4-quart glass bowl and you'll see how it fits on mine. If you think it's a little too short or you want yours to drape over some, just go ahead and adjust by adding inches to the size of the circle template. And we'll go over all that in the actual tutorial. But for right now, let's go over the supplies you're gonna need so we can get right into making it. To make a bowl cover, you'll need the bowl so that we can take some measurements and make a custom fit cover. For fabrics, I suggest 2 different prints, and the amount you need is going to vary depending on the size bowl you're making a cover for. You'll also need elastic, and I suggest anywhere from 1/4 inch wide to about 1/2 inch wide elastic, and at least 1 yard of that will be plenty. Then you'll need your basic sewing supplies like things to mark, measure, cut your fabrics with, a working sewing machine with straight stitch and zigzag capability, and an iron and ironing board. So the first step is to grab your bowl, and we're going to measure the diameter from top to bottom, one side to one side of the circle, and this one here measures 10 inches. Now this is a 4-quart glass bowl, so this will give you an idea. Now the center here, from the center out to any point on the circle, is called the radius. And so that's basically half of whatever the full diameter is, which in our case is going to be 5 inches. Now, if we use the raw measurements of the actual bowl, our cover won't fit, right? We need to have extra so it overhangs, so we'll add 2 inches. Now, unless you have a template that's exactly the size circle that you need, it can be tricky to freehand a symmetrical circle, and usually compasses aren't this big. So I'm going to show you a way to do it. Now, one way is to flip your bowl face down like this on top of your fabric, and then you're going to measure from the outside edge out however much bigger you want the circle to be, whatever your overhang is. Plot the points and then you can trace around and cut. But I'm going to show you an easier way to do it with some simple math. You're going to take one of your fabrics and we'll create the template from one, then we'll use it to cut the second one. And so you can see my fabric is folded in half one way this way and then folded in half the other way. And you want to do this so that when it's folded in 4s, you see how it's 4 layers there? We're basically going to be cutting out 1/4 of the circle. And so when we open it up, kind of like a snowflake, right? It's all going to be symmetrical and reflected. So mirror image across and down, so you'll get a full circle template cut out of the fabric by just making 1 cut. So to do that, this is our center point. So that's like the center of the circle. From there to any point on the outside needs to be 6 inches. Remember, because we're cutting a 12-inch circle all the way around, and that's the center there. So if you have it folded once, that's my center. I fold it again. This is still my center. And from there, I need to measure up and to the left 6 inches, right? Because we said that was half of the 12-inch circle that we need to cut. So measure from here 6 inches. Grab something to mark your fabric with so you can measure with your ruler and measure that here and up to 6 inches and plot that point. And then we're going to go the opposite direction to the left. Now, same thing. From that center point, place it on the 6 on your ruler and mark 6 inches over. And then you're going to be plotting little points basically to make that curve match from there to there. You can freehand it. It's not going to be that perfect, but here's a tip for getting it a little bit more symmetrical. So from that center point to anywhere to the outside edge of the circle is 6 inches. So all you got to do is keep that 6-inch mark of your ruler on that centermost point and then mark little lines and turn it little by little, so then you have these dashed lines that you can kind of connect the dots to make that outer curve that you'll use to cut. Then you can connect the dots that you made for the perfect curve that you need to follow as you cut. Make sure everything is set and nice and flat. Grab your rotary cutter or scissors and cut through all 4 of the layers. And when you open it, you'll see you end up with a perfect 12-inch circle. Now keep in mind that for our 10-inch bowl, I only cut this at 12 inches, so you're only going to have about 1 inch overhang on each side, not accounting for your seam allowance. So it is going to be a tight fit. If you want yours to drape over more, make sure you make your circle larger. So here's a better visual of the overhang. Our bowl measures 10 inches. We cut the circle at 12, so it only gives us 2 more inches. So that's 1 inch on each side, which gives you a 1 inch overage all the way around. Now keep in mind, it will be smaller after we sew the fabrics together because you have to account for the seam allowance. So if you want yours to be bigger, make sure that you're cutting a large enough circle so that it comes down further on the bowl body. So in this case, if you wanted it longer, maybe cut a 14-inch circle or a 15-inch circle so you have enough to go over. But once you determine the size of that first circle, use it as your template to cut out another circle to the same size out of your second fabric. Place the circles together with pretty sides touching, grab your pins, pin all the way around to keep everything in place, and head over to the sewing machine. With a 1/4 inch seam allowance and a straight stitch, I want you to stitch all the way around, but making sure that you leave about 1.5 inches to 2 inch opening, and remember to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Then you'll need to clip your curves. I like to use pinking shears and trim away a little bit from the seam allowance all the way around, but make sure you leave the seam allowance that's sticking out where you have your opening. Next, reach into the opening and flip the whole thing right side out. I like to run my fingers on the inside down and around the seam allowance to pull out all that fabric, and then give everything a good press. Remember that at the opening, you're going to want to tuck in those raw edges so everything lies nice and flat. Now go ahead and grab your elastic, and I'm working with knit elastic here. It's really nice and stretchy, and it's about 3/8 of an inch wide, which I like for this. Choose the side of the fabric that you want to basically be the lining, or the part that's going to be underneath, that's not going to be showing on top when you have the cover on the bowl. We'll also be stitching this down to preserve the stretch of the elastic with a zigzag stitch. Now, as far as how much of the elastic you're actually going to need, it's going to depend on the size of the bowl and how stretchy the elastic you're using is. So instead of cutting it to a specific size, I like to keep a longer piece and stitch it on as I go, because this is going to go all the way around the entire edge here of our circle. And you can see that this one measures almost the same size, but I'm probably not even going to use half of this because I will be stretching it to its max as I stitch it on. So instead of cutting it to a specific size, just start off with a longer piece and you'll just cut off what you don't end up using. So now let's head over to the sewing machine to select a zigzag stitch. So we basically have our project here. I don't even bother to stitch up the closing because as I stitch the elastic on, it's going to zigzag stitch over all that. So save yourself another step, especially with this super quickie version, okay? Now, I have no problem with the elastic showing on the underside of it because it doesn't fray. So either choose an elastic in a cute color or just buy white or a solid black, something to match with the fabrics you're using. So I'm going to come in here because this is the part that I want to be on the exterior. So the elastic is going to go on the underside and the lining part. And I'm going to select a zigzag stitch on my machine. So for those of you that have maybe manual settings and you can adjust your zigzag stitch, I put mine a 4.0 width. So we'll go 4.0 width because that kind of will take up almost all of the elastic. And then a 2.0 length. So 2 millimeters in length and 4 millimeters wide. So I just line it up with the edge of my project. And then I take a few zigzag stitches there just to hold it in place. Now, this is a little tricky if you're not familiar with working with elastic, but I'm going to be pulling on this as much as I can, basically, and with this hand guiding the circle. So you'll see. Okay, and you can see that that is gathering it. And I'm using some really cute thread, so it really looks cute from the outside, okay? So again, you're pulling on the elastic to stretch it. A zigzag stitch for sure. You don't want to do this with a straight stitch. And then I'm feeding this and keeping an eye on pulling on this and guiding it on the edge of the fabric. And I'm working my way around to the end. I'm just going to overlap it here, zigzag stitch over the join, and then just trim away the excess of the elastic. All right, and there it is. Let's try it on our bowl and see how it looks. And And there you have it, quick and easy way to whip up some very easy stash busting and beginner friendly reusable bowl covers. I hope that you'll whip out some fabric from your stash and just some elastic. 1 yard of elastic is going to get you several of these bowl covers because you're stretching it as you stitch it down. So give it a try. If you think it fits too snug on one bowl, don't toss it. Just use it on a different bowl, okay? Because remember, the elastic is going to stretch on you as long as you use that zigzag stitch like I taught you. Now, if you enjoyed this video tutorial, hit it with the thumbs up below, share it with some of your crafty friends, and if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, go ahead and click the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Thanks again for watching, and for those of you that joined for the entire series of my 12 days of last minute gifts, thanks again for watching. Remember, I'll include a link in the description box below on where you can find all 12 of my last minute DIY gifts video tutorials in this series, and you can always find them at the end of each video in the series as well. I'll link you to all 12 of them right there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be back soon with another fun video tutorial.